Well, Mark, thank you so much for coming to Burien and addressing our Burien news readers and video watchers. So, would you please introduce yourself and what you're running for?
Yeah, I'm Mark Mullet. I'm running for governor, and I was originally born and raised right next door in Tukwila. I graduated from Foster High School back in 1990. My dad graduated from that same high school in 1961, so this is actually the area where
This is home territory right here.
Home territory, and still back. My mom in Tukwila, so back on a very regular basis to this exact part of town. So.
That's great. And you've been in the legislature here in Washington State for how long?
So for 12 years, I've represented Issaquah, East King County. That goes all the way down towards Enumclaw, out to North Bend, up to Snoqualmie Pass. So it's kind of a mix of urban and rural because you have Costco's global headquarters, but you also have dairy farms and other things. So it's kind of a nice sort of a microcosm of how the actual state is, where you have urban and rural all mixed into one state.
Right. And you have a large family?
We have 6 kids. Isabel's the oldest. She's finishing her junior year up at Western in Bellingham, and Penelope, the youngest, is about to finish 8th grade in 3 weeks. So that'll be great.
And you're a small business owner.
So I am involved in the healthy food group. So I have a pizza restaurant, Zeke's Pizza, and then I have 4 Ben & Jerry's ice cream stores. So my life outside the legislature, we're in session January through April. So from May through December, I'm in my restaurants 5 days a week, and that's how, our kids, when they want money, we say, hey, I'm glad you want money because we have shifts in restaurants.
We have
Go
jobs
to work.
for you.
We have jobs. So it works out really nice.
That's terrific. Well, thank you for coming. Thank you for coming to Burien. Yeah. We appreciate that. And so we're going to ask you the questions that have been most important to Burien folks and that we're asking other candidates as well to address. And so the first question is this issue of homelessness. We're out in front of Town Hall here, and we've had dozens of tents here in the past, all the way up and down the street. We look down here and we have the remnants of all kinds of garbage and so forth. So this issue of homelessness is very important in our city. What's your approach as governor? What would you be doing to address the issues of homelessness?
Well, I think there's a few different things. First off, my current role in the Senate is I chair the state construction budget. So I've made investments in Burien and with nonprofits like Mercy Housing to try to get more affordable housing options for people in Burien right now, because our goal is we don't want people on the streets. I want the streets and sidewalks of Burien, the parks of Burien, to be safe and open to the public. I think that's important no matter what city you are in the state. Your right-of-way is for the public, not for people to take over and live on, because that's where they choose to be. I think so it's a multi-pronged approach where you have to make those state investments in affordable housing, but at the same time, it's like there's other issues, right, around substance abuse, addiction. And I'm a big believer that the missing link in our state is secure substance abuse treatment facilities. We have this belief that substance abuse treatment only works if you're ready for it. So someone could be using drugs in public, they get arrested, they get put in jail, they go to a substance abuse treatment facility, but the second they feel like leaving, they just walk out the front door. And to me, this is the missing link we have in our state. And I don't know if it's for 30 days, 45 days, or 60 days, but people using drugs in public, I don't want to put them in jail for a year, but I want to get them access to treatment where they actually have the best chance of success. And that means the front door isn't open. And to me, this is where the state can step up financially to make sure in areas all around our state, people using drugs in public are actually getting substance abuse treatment. Because I think that's one of the best ways we can really move the needle when it comes to homelessness.
Recently, there's been a number of leading officials, including our mayor and deputy mayor, that have signed on to agreement or a statement that if you're receiving public funds, you are in treatment, and in a pretty black and white. Where would you come down on that? What's your sense on that?
Yeah, I feel very similar. It's like we're not here to have people just take money and then continue to use drugs in public. The government should not be enabling that behavior. We're there to be a partner to help people beat their addiction, not just continue to use drugs. And so this is the role I think we need to play. In the state, I think, can have a financial carry. Like I always look at our cannabis tax revenue. We get $480 million a year of taxes from marijuana. That did not exist when I got to the Senate in 2012, because that's the year the initiative passed. I've been very clear. We should be pushing that money out to cities and counties that are willing to invest in public safety to make sure the parks and sidewalks are free and clear for people to go to work and go to school. We shouldn't just give cities and counties a blank check, but if they're willing to actually make those investments, the state the state of Washington should be the financial partner with those cities and counties that actually want to actually make progress when it comes to public safety, because it doesn't happen at the state level. We have the state patrol. They're going to pull you over on the freeway. I came from the Issaquah City Council to the state Senate. Public safety happens at the local level. The state has not been a good financial partner for cities who want to make progress on public safety, and that can change if I'm in the governor's office.
Yes. Speaking of that, obviously we have a contention issue right now between the Burien city and the the sheriff's department. Are you up on that? And
I am.
And would you address that for us in your thinking right now, and maybe some questions?
I think the county sheriff should be honoring the contract and enforcing the laws. That, Burien has made it clear they want their streets, their sidewalks and parks free and clear and safe for their public to use, for the residents of Burien to use. They shouldn't. No city should just watch their open public spaces be removed from public access. And to me, I'm disappointed that, hopefully the county comes around and there's an agreement that is reached so they can actually enforce those laws. I know they do that in other neighboring cities.
Yes, they do it in SeaTac.
Yeah, and to me it makes sense. It should be happening here in Burien, and I'm on Burien's side when it comes to that issue. I mean, my very first bill when I got to the Senate, this was in 2013, is I had to run a bill for Maple Valley to have zoning control over a parcel of land smack in the middle of their city, because King County wanted to zone it the exact opposite of how the town of Maple Valley wanted it zoned. I had to actually pass a bill against the wishes of King County Executive Dow Constantine to say, hey, cities should have more control over what happens in their cities. And if there's a conflict between the city and county, I err on the side of supporting the city. And that was literally one of the very first bills I passed in the Senate back in 2013, was me going to fight for Maple Valley against an issue where they felt the county was not supporting them.
This obviously is a significant issue with some of the smaller towns, Burien, Tukwila, all these, especially in South King County. It seems like, because you have some communities like ours that are not necessarily well-to-do communities, and they're very vulnerable to what the county wants to do in kind of pushing it through. When they said that the law that we passed, which is the same as Bellevue, is unconstitutional. Bellevue's had it for a year and a half. Somehow it wasn't unconstitutional in Bellevue with all the money, but it is unconstitutional in Burien, where we don't have a lot of money. So it really is an interesting thing, and having someone who stands up for cities is important.
Yeah, and hopefully this issue gets resolved, and obviously if it doesn't, I think Burien will have to look seriously whether they want to be contracting with the county for services that they're not performing at the level the city of Burien says their residents both need and demand.
Good, thank you. Let's move on to our second question, which we're kind of touching on already, but crime obviously is a huge issue around here, and it's been, some people say it's only the perception, but I think most people feel the reality of it is crime is increasing. What would be your stance regarding issues of crime and how it's enforced, and where we want to go with this if you were the governor?
I have two things I've been saying since I got in this race, in June of last year. It's public safety and affordability. These are the two areas I say Democrats should be proud of, the things where we're leading the country, and that's around protecting women's reproductive rights, making sure members of the LGBT community are treated equally. Like, pat ourselves in the back and say, hey, we are national leaders in that, but where we are not national leaders is public safety and affordability. So public safety has been the core of our campaign. I am endorsed by, LAW, which is the Association of Police and Sheriffs. So they've endorsed my campaign. WACOPS has also endorsed my campaign. That's unusual for them to endorse a Democrat for governor. The reason they are doing that is because I have been the Democrat that has stood up in the Senate these last few years and said, hey, people, we have to admit we're not getting this right. This is why we need a change in leadership in the governor's office. We need someone who's going to prioritize public safety, but at the same time, the social values line up with the majority of Washington residents. Is we want someone who's pro-choice, we want someone pro-marriage equality, but we also are demanding somebody who is pro-public safety. And this has been our missing link. And this is why I'm running, is because I have the social values that line up with the majority of our residents, but I've also been the Democrat in the legislature who's been the most vocal. This is why the law enforcement organizations have all endorsed my campaign. They have not endorsed Bob Ferguson. He is not the one that has their back. I am the one who stood up, had the political courage to say, hey, we're not getting this right, Democrats. We can do better.
Good. Okay. Thank you. And then let's go on to our third issue. we live in the Highline School District. The Washington State school system as a whole is not doing well. Highline School District is in the bottom of Washington State. We've got only 21% of our kids when they graduate can do math, and only 34% can pass the English test. So we have real issues. You're a small business guy, you get it. It's hard to employ people that can't do basic math and can't read and write. So how, as the governor, would you help address this issue of a failing school system?
So let's start off. I went to Tukwila School District right next door. That's, the path out of poverty for myself, my older brother, and my younger brother was public education. That was our path out of poverty. If we didn't have access to that, I would not be where I am today. So I think there's nothing more important to me than making sure our public school system works. All 6 of my kids are in the public school system. My wife is a public elementary school teacher in the Esquimalt School District and has been for the last 25 years. This is a huge contrast between Bob Ferguson and myself. Like, I'm in the public school system. I went through the public school system. My kids are in the system. Like, Bob went to private school. His kids go to private school. I feel strongly that the public school system should be good enough for the governor's family. That is really important, I think, for voters to understand. The public school system should be good enough for the governor's family. I feel like when Susan Enfield was here as the superintendent of Highline, she was doing, I thought, really good things. I mean, and so I know that we can achieve good results in the Highline School District. I think the leadership matters. I think the state can step up to do a better job of funding special education and transportation efforts. And I think we can also look at what the state can do for communities like Tukwila and like the Highline School District, where you don't have, some of those same PTA supports like you would get from where my kids go to school in Issaquah. And the question is, what can the state do on that front to be a better financial partner? But I chair the state construction budget. Under my budget, we have become the best financial partner in the history of the state of putting up extra state dollars to help build schools. And to me, this is important because it's hard enough to pass a school bond. Nobody can afford to pay more in property taxes. This is why I pushed so hard on the chair of the state construction budget this year to actually have the state be a better financial partner. So when you go to ask your voters for a bond, you don't have to ask for as many tax dollars as you do right now. Like, going forward, you can ask for fewer tax dollars because the state is picking up a larger percentage of those school costs. And this is going to be important going forward. We need a public school system that works. Otherwise, nobody will have a path out of poverty unless, and not everyone is born into an upper middle class family. And I am living proof that if you have a public school system that works, you can actually, you can work your way up the ladder and be successful.
Yes, good. So, love having a chance just to tell our Burien readers why they should vote for you. Why Mark Mullet?
Well, I always say the last 3 decades in the state of Washington, every single governor has been a lawyer. Every governor has been a lawyer. It is time to have a small business owner in the governor's office, because the common thread with all small business owners is we hate wasting money. If you waste money as a small business owner, you are literally out of business the next year. That is the mentality we need in the governor's office. We don't need to keep asking for new tax dollars every year. We need a governor who's actually get bang for the buck out of the billions of dollars we currently already receive in taxes. When I got to the Senate, my first budget was 2013. That was a $34 billion state budget. And this year, in March, we passed a $72 billion state budget. So that's been our state revenue growth. We have taxes in the state of Washington. What we don't have is someone in the governor's office who's making sure we're actually getting bang for our buck out of those tax dollars. And to me, this is really important. This is the mentality we need in our governor's office now more than ever. And I've been committed to affordability because, my wife and I have anxiety that Isabel, the oldest of our kids, who's going to be done with school next year, will not be able to live in the place where I was born and raised. My dad was born and raised. My wife was born and raised. Her dad went to Garfield High School. Like, our families have been here for generations. And when you're nervous that your own kids won't be able to live in the place that you love more than anywhere else on earth because it's no longer affordable, if that's not a wake-up call that we need a different mentality in the governor's office in Olympia, I don't know what the wake-up call is. But that's the wake-up call that's happened in my household. That's why I'm running for governor, is I want to see our state be affordable for average families. And we have to be honest. like as the chair of the state construction budget, I've had a front row seat for a decade of trying to get a building permit in the state of Washington. It is not quick, it's not predictable, it's not fair. People complain about how expensive everything is, but we as the government are doing things to make it expensive to build the things we need to build. And that's housing, that's schools, it's hospitals, it's fire stations, it's everything. And we have to be honest with ourselves. We can make it quicker and more predictable to build the things we need to build in the state of Washington. That'll make it affordable. When it comes to climate change, you can fight climate change without having the highest gas prices in the country. This is where Governor Inslee and myself have disagreed. I drive an electric car to and from Olympia every day, but I will say the price of gas matters, and I'm sick and tired of this false choice that people right now complaining about the price of gas don't care about climate change, because that's just simply not true. Like, we can fight climate change without having the current gas misery we went through in the summer of 23. And to me, these are really important changes if we want our state to stay affordable. And I give an example of how taxes can make our state unaffordable. The long-term care payroll tax, that was passed in 2019. If you go back and look through, there's only 2 Democrats who had the political courage to vote against the long-term care payroll tax. One of them's right here looking at you. And I did that because I knew that that was going to make our state unaffordable for average working families. This wasn't a tax that they were asking for. It was a tax that was forced upon them. And I'm supporting the initiative to make that tax optional this November. Bob Ferguson is not supporting that initiative to make that tax optional. He's supporting the special interest group that gave us the tax to begin with. And to me, this is why affordability is so important. And public safety, we talked about, right? This is the core message of our campaign. This is why I have the endorsements from the law enforcement organizations in the state of Washington. Our state needs to be safe, period. The state needs to step up financially to be a partner, to make sure we have these secure substance abuse treatment facilities, and also to make sure we have a governor who just acknowledges in public the sacrifices our law enforcement officers make on a daily basis. I've done ride-alongs with police, and for me, that experience has been eye-opening, because you're interacting with people that you can tell they're high on some sort of substance, and even if they're not being physically aggressive to you right then and there, you have the sense that it could happen at any given second, and it's not a comfortable situation. And so I get really frustrated when people start second-guessing our law enforcement officers. And in my experience in Burien, we train our law enforcement officers in the state right here, Criminal Justice Training Academy, just down the road on First Avenue. The state can step up, and this is one of the bills I'm really proud of that we passed this year. For the first time, the state, or first time in 15 years, is paying all the costs for Burien Training Academy. Like before, the cities had to put up money for their officers to go through Burien. That was something we started way back in the Great Recession in 08. And it was my bill, and then we put it in the budget this year that finally got approved, that the state's stepping up finally to pay those costs. And those are the areas I talk about where we can be a better financial partner to cities and counties when it comes to public safety. To me, it doesn't matter where you fall on the political spectrum. You can be far left, you can be far right. When our state becomes more affordable and our state becomes more safe, everybody wins. Everybody in Washington feels, I'm glad we have a different person in the governor's office. And yes, I may be a bad haircut from the 80s, but I work in a bipartisan manner with Republicans and Democrats from Eastern Washington and Western Washington to solve the biggest challenges facing our state. We don't need more partisan vitriol. There's enough of that happening back in Washington, D.C. We don't need it in Washington State. We need someone in the governor's office who has that track record of working across the aisle to solve our state's biggest challenges. Everybody wants our state to be more affordable and more safe. And like I said, this is where I'm born and raised in Tukwila. I've had a soft spot in my heart for Burien for my entire life. And I love your guys' support and happy to be here.
Thank you. Senator Mullet, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you for coming down to Burien, and best to you in your race.
Hey, thank you very much.
Okay.